welcome back to Black Swan Outdoors, and today is a long overdue video here that I've had wanting to do months and months ago, but just for whatever reason was not able to do that, and that is on the Ceil buttons. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Ceil buttons is made by Jacobite Solutions from Aberdeen, Scotland. And so I'm not terribly familiar with the Gaelic pronunciation, if that is correct. So please correct me in the comment section down below if that is right. I'm excited about this product for a number of reasons. Initially, one of the things that I was most excited about is that it's a replication of the OSS tools that were used, and the particularly SOE tools used early on in World War II. And then the OSS had followed suit with some of these concealment items and different types of kind of spy gear, if you will, kind of James Bondy kind of stuff. And that's really where a lot of the James Bond inspiration kind of came from, particularly Q and some of these things. And the Ceil button really kind of is in honor of that, I believe. The other thing I'm really kind of excited about is that this is a 3D printed product. And one of the things about concealment devices, and I'll do a whole video on concealment devices soon, is that a lot of times you see concealment devices that are mass produced. So very common, probably one of the most common, is something like this, which is a hollow nickel. All right, so I did a video on that. We talked about the history of that before. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about other types of concealment devices. But the problem is with a concealment device like this, if you know what you're looking for, and the product is available on places like Amazon, one of the largest search engines on the internet, you're probably not really hiding anything that you think you might be. So there are some pretty serious potential issues with purchasing mass-produced stuff. It's always better just to make it on your own, to be honest. And I really think that this kind of yeomanry business that comes out of 3D printing and some of these small businesses that are kind of focusing on real kind of small niche markets are really kind of interesting, because they have this capacity to do things, not only go back into the future as what Jacobites did with this, but going back into history rather, but also going into the future and kind of looking at the needs for today as well. So those are some really kind of exciting things. That's really why I want to always support small businesses when I can, particularly small businesses that are always forward thinking, but have a deep knowledge and history in some of these products and can kind of reapply kind of the past. So enough with that. Let's talk about the Ceil buttons. So for those that are not familiar, buttons were used, hollow buttons were used to pass material, escape devices, things like that, by the SOE in World War II. And these buttons kind of do essentially the same thing. You can sew them right onto a garment, and you can wash them. You can wash that garment. And you can make sure that all of your supplies are still going to be kind of safe. Now, it's probably best to remove some of those things, or remove the caps perhaps, if you are going to wash the garment. But in general, this would be a safe way to have gear on your person all the time. The instructions actually say to wash at 30 degrees C, not to put in a dryer, and keep the threads lubricated. Threads. Oh yes, these are compartments here. So let's take a look and see what you get when you open up the Ceil buttons. So the larger one here, pop that open. What do we have? That is a handcuff key, just a small metallic handcuff key. Very lightweight. Very robust. I do like these metal handcuff keys because they don't break in the keyway when you need them the most, and they're just as light, I think, as plastic. Let's take a look at one of these small ones here. oh, look at that. We have some cordage. So probably some Spectre cordage, probably a poly cord that you could use as a saw to cut through plastic. So something like zip ties or restraining cuffs, plastic restraining cuffs. Back at the bigger button here, which I failed to notice or point out, was a shim. Look at that. That's pretty cool. We did a video on shims, how to make your shim and how to shim with the handcuffs. So if you're interested in that, check that out. But these are kind of cool. So it's nice to have a redundant means for handcuffs, particularly if you lose that or drop the handcuff key, that you have a backup in place that you can use. So we'll just put that right back. Let's go back to one of these small ones here. Open that up. So, you know, I already had these kind of pre-opened to make it a little bit easier and quicker for me to do this for video. This is a little glow-in-the-dark ring. That's kind of neat. Certainly not something you want to have glowing all the time, right? So it's nice that it has a little cap, but then when you do need a little light, I've done some videos on some light, on how to use glow or chem lights rather, different uses for those, and I did some posts on that as well, so check that out if you're interested. There's lots of use for little luminescence in non-permissive environments. And then let's go to the final here, the final cell, which is what Ceil means. It means cell in Gaelic. And that is another strand of cordage. Look at that. It's a longer strand of cordage, probably something better that you could use, say, making a saw with your feet to get through bindings as well. So all sorts of different great usage for cordage, not just restraints, but nice to have on your person for all sorts of different, like I said, different things, from fishing to snares, traps, all sorts of neat, really, endless usage. So this was essentially the cells. Now, when I first purchased this, I was trying to think of what is something that I could put these buttons on. What would make sense? Because they're fairly large buttons. Naturally, I gravitated to, the first thing I thought of was a pair of surplus pants, camo pants, perhaps. Then I thought, you know what, I really wouldn't be wearing those a whole lot, although I think for many of those pants it would work really well, especially when they have that hidden button fly for these smaller buttons. So I thought, yeah, that would probably be the initial. Then I thought maybe I would look around for some other garments. Then it kind of hit me back in the early 2000s, for those that are around that time. Back then, a lot of Blackwater guys, CIA guys, and CAG operators all wore these cool kind of fishing safari vests. They're out of favor now, but you could carry knives and a pocket full of grenades and a blowout kit and conceal your weapon, and just kind of not be kind of an overt, covert kind of style. Again, it's not really popular these days. You don't see that very often. However, which is kind of interesting, they are kind of making a comeback slightly because of airline prices are so high with baggage that people are actually buying these travel vests and fly fishing vests to travel with, that they could that doesn't count as another piece of luggage. So you could have essentially a third piece of luggage that you're wearing on the plane. So I think is kind of cool. But I looked around to see what I could find. I didn't really see anything that really struck my fancy until I found, or I thought of, the old safari jackets. These were kind of, in a sense, I believe the original inspiration for some of those vests. The idea behind a vest is that it's lightweight in a hot environment. Oftentimes it's a little more convenient than a backpack, but it's still going to be fairly light. You can still carry lots of things. But the safari jacket really kind of came out of, I believe it was World War I, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of times the earlier ones were olive drab or khaki because they kind of came out of that kind of British combat aesthetic, if you will. But these are robust jackets. They're great for keeping you warm. They're great for keeping the sun off for the hot weather. They have a lot of great usage. Perhaps what's more common these days are the unstructured sport coats and blazers. But back in the 70s, you know, these were the new hotness. These safari jackets, they were the thing. But so a lot of the same, what I'm getting at is a lot of the same advantages with the safari jackets you can find with some of these vests, and they don't stand out as a vest either, and they're perhaps a little bit more stylish. This particular one is a vintage that I found on eBay, and it was made by Banana Republic back when Banana Republic was known for its kind of styles like this. And in fact, they did make vests that CAG operators had worn and CIA guys had run around the Middle East with. But the reason why I like this is that it is a jacket that would accommodate buttons, large buttons, very, very easily, as you can see here. And so because of that, then it's a jacket that you could wear easily out and about. It blends in well with the buttons, plus it gives you more capabilities. So for example, you could even, in one of these little pockets here, you know, you could keep your tissue map. We did a video on these. Oops, just tore that map. That's how fragile these things are. You have to be careful. But you can see I have a map here. I have my buttons. I would have a jacket that would be kind of, in a sense, a survival jacket, if you will, or very kind of reminiscent of the World War II fighter pilots that had jackets with maps sewn into the back of the fabric, and they had kind of some escape tools in those jackets as well. But again, what you want is something that's going to blend in your environment as well and not stand out as much. And I think that this could kind of fit the bill. So it's something that I thought was kind of interesting, and just as important, I believe, or another important factor to this is that it's a garment that you're not going to wash all the time. So it's something that you can keep tools in, because a problem with layering tools within all your clothing is that you have to take all those tools out. It takes time, particularly if you're going to be washing your clothes. So if you have, you know, keys and shims and shit hidden in the hem of your jeans, you might want to take those out. But you're probably not going to wash a jacket like this with the same frequency. So it's not going to be as convenient, meaning you could just put that on and also not stand out when it's super hot or cold, and you could layer underneath it, so on and so forth. So very versatile for pretty much many different types of environments. So it might be something to think about. So going back to our buttons, our cells here, that was a little side tangent, but I think it's an important one because you want to think about the application that you have for something like this. How are you going to apply it to the garment that you're going to have so it doesn't stand out? Certainly this is that kind of polycarbonate that's very common with 3D printers. I forget the name of it. Please put it in the comments below, FDM or whatever it is. And so it might be something that you might want to think about covering, maybe with fabric or painting or something like that, depending on the garment you had. But you could probably certainly do something along those lines, or, you know, putting together a sewing kit and having one of these buttons in that sewing kit. You can certainly sew one of the extra buttons if you had, you know, as if it was an extra button on the garment that you're wearing. So inside, you know, say the sleeve of the jacket, that's a very common place for buttons, or inside the jacket itself, or the hem, or not hem, but the inside the pants underneath the waist. Oftentimes you see extra buttons, so that might be something you want to think about, is sewing the button on there. So even if it doesn't fit the garment that you're wearing or that you want it to wear, you could sew it in as an extra button and it wouldn't stand out as well, because someone would actually have to inspect your pants or jacket, meaning you'd have to take it off. So to an outside, it would just look like, or to someone at a glance, would just look like a spare button. But it would be, again, hidden in the hem of your pants or the jacket or inside your coat or whatever. So with all that said, I really like this product. It's certainly something that I was very excited on. It's certainly something that I'm going to be developing into my everyday carry, perhaps with that safari jacket or other pieces of garments for when I travel and traveling in high-risk areas. Because I think having some of these tools can be important depending on what you're doing and who you are and where you're going. So with that, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions or comments, please put them down below. It's always great to have a conversation, discussion on these things. And if you are interested in topics like this, stay tuned. We are going to go into some more E&E kind of specific kits very soon. Thanks again.